Hello and welcome, fellow lifelong learners. Thanks for joining me for One More Thing, a radio show all about cultivating our most valuable asset, our mind, and fostering a sense of curiosity to learn one more thing. We feature passionate practitioners and seasoned experts in numerous areas of interest for lifelong learners of all ages. One More Thing is sponsored by Kiffin & Company, a corporate learning and talent development consulting firm, and I'm your host, Kiffin McCoy-Albert, a certified professional in talent development, learning advocate, and your fellow lifelong learner. Welcome to the show. Hey everybody, I cannot believe it is the end of 2024 and that we are 15 episodes in. This is wild. Before I get into the content about the 12 activities for practicing lifelong learning, I wanted to just go back and give a super brief recap for each of the episodes and really encourage you to go back and listen to any that you may have missed or re-listen to any that you really enjoyed. I personally have actually been really enjoying going back and listening to parts especially of specific episodes. So I hope you'll do the same. So let's look really quickly back at the episodes that we had. Episodes 1 and 2 really featured me. The first one was an interview with the owner of the iHeartRadio station that the show is on. She interviewed me to get us kicked off, and then I did a deeper dive in episode 2 of what we're doing and why. But I want to really talk about the episodes with my guests. So I know this is going to be a fast recap, but I really wanted to just touch on each one. Episode 3 was the first one with a guest, and Dr. John St. Clair was my guest, and he is not a genealogist by profession, but that's something that he's really enjoyed and become passionate about, and he shared some of his knowledge and tips and best practices for how to go about doing some genealogy research. Episode 4 was with Kathleen Moore, who is an RN by background. And one of the things that she's really passionate about within both her professional and even in her personal life is a topic called motivational interviewing. This is something that was developed in one area of practice and has really proliferated into other areas as it has been shown to be so important. So if you want to know more about motivational interviewing, please go back and listen to that one as well. The fifth episode was with Gina Rivers. She is a professional private housekeeper, and she shared some of the things that she sees clients doing that make it harder on her as their housekeeper, but also harder on themselves for keeping their own house clean. Episode 6 was with Suzanne Hebden. This one is another one that this is not her profession, it's her passion. She is an artist and has recently illustrated her first children's book. And she talked about the genesis or the origin of some of the colors and also some of the reasons that we think of colors in a certain way, the organic beginnings, and how some of the colors came from harmful products in order to get those colors, but we're a vain society, and so people wore them anyway, sometimes before they knew that it was bad. Episode 7, this was with author Bill Fitz, and he has written multiple books in 2 different series, a science fiction fantasy series and a cozy mysteries series. So go back and check out his episode where he shares about self-publishing and about how it is to be a novelist full-time, everything from character development to plot. It's all very interesting. Then episodes 8 and 9 were actually a 2-parter. So episode 8 was the beginning, and then we wrapped up in episode 9, a conversation with Dr. Whit Gibbons, who is a renowned herpetologist, and his grandson, Parker Gibbons, who is a naturalist and photographer and is really making his own way in the world using the passion and education that he's gotten from his grandfather all these years. So if you want to hear about snakes and turtles and frogs and all the things in nature, it's really a fascinating episode. Episode 10 is with Desiree Dyer, And you want to talk about fascinating. When you think about the fact that our current governments, generally speaking in the world, have been around for a really long time, the fact that she is part of a Native American tribe that has just gotten full federal recognition in the last 10 years. And so she has gotten to be a part of crafting that government, crafting the Constitution, and really setting up this now sovereign entity. Episodes 11 and 12 were both with Tracy O'Hara. Episode 11 is the power of breath work, and she talks about being able to reset within your own life. And then episode 12, we talked about her being a certified raw vegan chef and chocolatier and how to get started if you have interest in doing so yourself. Episode 13 is with Joshua Wathen, and he is a corporate executive, but he's also a military veteran, and talked about the difference and the similarities and how to handle eustress and distress, basically good and bad stress, and the importance and how to handle them. And then episode 14 was the most recent one, and that was with Erin McCoy, and she is a guardian ad litem in Indiana. And she shared her experience and knowledge about what it means to be a guardian ad litem, how the courts use the recommendations that she provides, and really gave us a basic understanding of when and how guardian ad litems are used in the court system. And then this episode, I'm going to focus on some activities that you can do to make your practice of lifelong learning lots of fun. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you go back and listen to previous episodes, share them with your friends, send me recommendations for future shows, and really enjoy the next couple of weeks of the holiday season, giving yourself some time to relax. Talk to you in the new year. This is the last episode of the year. So I thought I would share a little bit about lifelong learning as a topic itself, since that's the focus of this show. Lifelong learning has been defined in several ways, but one that I think makes the most sense is that it's an ongoing and voluntary quest for knowledge where an individual is intrinsically motivated to continue learning for both personal and professional development reasons. Lifelong learners have a thirst for knowledge and intentionally pursue learning new things voluntarily. We're not talking about the mandated learning options here. And there are lots of reasons that lifelong learning can improve quality of life, like increased self-confidence through improving your level of competence, as well as engaging your mind by developing neural pathways, keeping us focused, and alleviating boredom. Some even say that you sleep better. Just like when you get physical exercise, mental exercise can also be beneficial to our sleep. Being a role model as a lifelong learner for others, especially children, can improve their likelihood of also becoming a lifelong learner and valuing continuous learning. Let's talk about some ways that you can put into practice lifelong learning activities. These are in no particular order because I don't want to assign any kind of rating or level of importance to one over another. So, activity number one, think about topics that are of interest to you, even if they're fairly broad, because then as you start looking for books, videos, podcasts, webinars about those topics, you'll be able to kind of narrow the focus and figure out where you're actually truly interested, where you want to focus your time. You'll need to set aside time to allow yourself to focus your attention on reading, listening, or watching those resources that you find. Initially, you may start and not finish much of what you find, but the goal is that you'll narrow down to the types of information and resources that resonate with you. I'm all about podcasts, YouTube videos, audiobooks, but also don't completely ignore actual books. There's actual research to show that holding a book, seeing the words, and turning the pages have a positive impact on enjoyment and retention. While I specifically started this suggested activity by saying, think of a topic that you're interested in, I would also suggest doing the same with topics that you intentionally choose for being outside of your normal area or areas of interest. One of the ways that I'm trying to practice lifelong learning is through better understanding of other cultures. I just keep in mind that understanding often breeds tolerance and reduces fear and dislike. Okay, activity number two, visiting local or semi-local places like museums, art galleries, other landmark places. And I say local as in your town or a neighboring town, semi-local, maybe you take a day trip. But taking time to go and experience something offers a different level of learning than just reading about it or seeing a video. A number of years ago, my mom and I took two of my nephews. They were maybe 5 and 7 at the time. We took them to a train museum that's about an hour or so away from where we live. The boys got to see full model train sets. They were able to hear historical information about trains and railways, and they got to actually climb up on and play around a real train engine and caboose that were no longer in service. They had so much fun and learned way more than they would have having to sit still in a formal learning environment. Activity number three, spend time in nature. Breathing fresh air and soaking up vitamin D are certainly additional benefits too. But as you're outside in nature, you may start to look at things more closely or intentionally. There's that word, intentional again. One of the ways that this can spur learning is seeing things that you don't know what they are. You may end up wanting to buy a book or find a video on something that you saw. We certainly live in an age where we can at least use a resource like Google Lens to try to find out the name of a flower or bug or whatever we see. And often this kind of thing leads those of us who are lifelong learners down the proverbial rabbit hole of information. And what fun can that be? Another way is even getting a field guide like my guests Whit and Parker Gibbons talked about and have even authored, that those books allow you to take that book with you and specifically look for creatures, or if you got a plant-based one, a particular plant that you've read about. So you can go on an adventure and look for specific things. And that can be experiential learning at its finest. And what a great way to engage multiple generations too. That leads me to activity four, which is simply to spend time with other lifelong learners. When you are around people who constantly are learning about new things, it can be fascinating to find out what they've been learning recently. In fact, that's exactly why I try to end each episode's interview by asking my guests what it is that they are currently learning about. So that's been really fun because a lot of times in my shows, the topic that the guest is talking about on my show is not necessarily what they then tell me is something that they are learning about themselves. So that can be really, really fascinating. Activity five is also related, but with a twist. So, activity five is to interview experts or people who are passionate about a particular topic. I mean, that's what this show is built on. There's no better way to keep learning than by having a conversation and asking questions to someone who knows a lot about something. The owner of the iHeart radio station where I began this show had a mentor who told her that very thing. And she now passes it on to all who work with her. And I find it so valuable. That's so true that in interviewing people about a topic, I'm learning. So one way that I'm also practicing lifelong learning is through this show. The value of learning from others can directly from others can absolutely be incredible. Activity six is really simple. Listen to music and really listen to it, not just as background noise, but really listen to it and listen to music of all genres, music that is not your normal go-to. Music has been proven to improve mood and reduce stress and aid or hinder focus, depending on the music itself. And so that means that certain kinds of music can actually improve our ability to learn. What a bonus. Activity seven, try new things to expand your overall experience and challenge yourself. This could mean foods that you don't normally eat, taking lessons for music, art, language, dance, and so on. The hope is that as you try new things, the experiential piece of learning, you will also learn about them, the awareness and the knowledge of them. One example story that I have is that when my husband and I were in Germany in 2019, in our Airbnb host in Heidelberg was part Syrian, part German. And the bottom floor of his building included a Syrian restaurant. Now, neither my husband nor I are very adventurous eaters, to be honest, but our host really, really wanted us to try some food and wine, so much so that he introduced us to the restaurant owner and picked out a few items for us to try. We very, very much enjoyed a delicious appetizer and a dessert, and I had no idea how good Syrian wine was. In the process of trying these menu items, we got a chance also to learn a little bit more about the culture and the food. It was one of our favorite experiences of our trip. And interestingly enough, we have a Middle Eastern restaurant here in the town where we live. And one of the times that I went in there, I was asking, I think one of the owners, manager for sure, but maybe owner, about the particular appetizer and actually in particular the dessert because we had never seen it before and we haven't seen it since. And he was, first of all, very surprised that we knew of it. It was an opening for us to have a conversation with him. And we learned even a little bit more about it and learned that it is actually a very difficult or labor intensive thing to make. So even, a couple of years later, we were still learning and it was still giving us a conversation piece after trying it on that trip. Activity number 8. How many times have you read a word or heard a concept that you had no idea what it was or what it meant? One simple way to practice lifelong learning is to take time to look up those words or concepts that you hear or see and don't know what they are. My guest on the show about being a guardian ad litem actually mentioned that this is a practice that she employs frequently. And I also do the same. And it actually is something that I am striving to be even more intentional about in the moment instead of skipping over something I don't know. If I might be reading a book, a blog post, whatever it might be, or even hearing a YouTube video, and there could be something that is written or said that I don't know exactly what it is. And sometimes I just move on. Sometimes you can get contextually a little bit about it, but I am trying to make sure that I do take the time to look it up because I do think that it impacts the overall understanding of what you're reading and hearing. And that leads me to activity 9, which is also kind of related. And that's to keep a list of areas of interest. So for the previous activity I was mentioning about looking up words or concepts that you don't know, if you can't look up that word or concept in the moment, then take note of it so that you can go back and you'll remember what it was to look it up later. But even beyond that, just in general, having a list of topics that you'd like to learn about gives you an easy place to reference, to go back and look at when you do have a few minutes of downtime or when you have purposefully set aside time for fun learning for your own development. Activity 10, if you want a more formal, although still voluntary learning activity, then look into taking a class online from a local college or university or some other community organization. There are lots of options for paid and free courses available in pretty much any topic that you can fathom. I know locally our senior center, so for older folks, our senior center actually has classes and activities. So things like that. The Boys and Girls Club, I believe, for younger children, they have things available that may be a little bit more for like homework help and things like that. Those types of organizations. I think Parks and Recreation for different communities often have classes that you can take. I have recently become part of the Great Discovery, which is an online resource for courses. Some are free, some are paid. I am still getting to know that platform, so I don't know a lot about it, but you're welcome to message me if you want to know more or if you'd like to join that. I'm an affiliate with them. And then you have places with courses like Udemy and Coursera, Khan Academy. There's many others. Even like LinkedIn Learning has classes on a variety of subjects, usually more professional based for that one. Activity 11, volunteer with an organization. Whether you serve in a capacity that allows you to learn from others, or if you become a mentor, you're bound to learn something new, even if that something new is about other people themselves. And this will expand your mind and maybe even your heart. And while you're learning, you're also helping your community by being of service to that organization. And finally, activity 12. Share with others about the things you've learned. It's often in our nature to share something new that we've learned with those we're closest to. And thanks to social media, we often share memes and videos and all kinds of things with all of our friends. So here's another place to use that word intentional. By intentionally sharing our knowledge, skills, and experience with others, we are also sharing the opportunity for lifelong learning. Just don't forget to fact check information that you see or hear, though, especially before you share it with others. A great familial example of sharing knowledge comes from my husband's dad. My late father in law was very much into cars. He spent many hours in his garage working on one vehicle or another, and both of his sons saw this and were able to learn all the basics from him. That eventually sparked a love of cars and fixing stuff in both of his sons. And today, those two brothers, my husband and his brother, own an automotive shop of their own. I think their dad would be so proud of the business they're building in an area of interest that they all shared. And this was prompted by his sharing of his knowledge of cars. While this list is certainly not exhaustive, I hope it has given you some ideas for either continuing your lifelong learning journey or kickstarting it if you don't feel that you are a lifelong learner, or at least you have not been a lifelong learner. I hope this gives you that motivation to be so.
Maximize impact with tailored solutions by partnering with Kiffin and Company. Developing your team is an investment, but it doesn't have to be just an expense. Discover more at kiffinandcompany.com and start your journey to effective learning today.
Okay, as with every show, I want to end this one by having some sort of correlation or tie back to workplace learning. When we talk about lifelong learning, and I mentioned that in this context, I am talking about ongoing, voluntary, intrinsically motivated pursuit of knowledge. When we are talking about workplace learning, though, it does not mean that there can't be lifelong learning that happens voluntarily. Obviously, within the workplace, there are lots of training and learning opportunities that are mandated. But for those who want to continually professionally develop themselves, they could still be lifelong learners, even in the professional workplace setting. So, one of the things that as a learning professional, I always want to remind people of is that we want to make opportunities available, right? So, we want to have things available, whether this is in a learning management system, so online courses that they can take at their own leisure, or offering classroom based courses could be the case too, or even being able for them to document and show other voluntary areas of interest, learning opportunities they've taken advantage of outside of the workplace, but maybe apply back to their job. So, one of the things that I think is really important is to not make every training, every course, every learning opportunity that may be available through the workplace in a formal setting, don't make it mandatory. There's obviously mandatory things that have to happen, and that's important, but be sure that we are thinking about opportunities that are there that they can take advantage, that employees can take advantage of, that are not mandatory. And not just they're not mandatory on paper, but that they know and feel confident that it is a voluntary thing. At the same time, please, 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 workplace leaders, if you're hearing this, give your employees some time to be able to spend on voluntary learning opportunities in various areas of interest. You may be surprised at how a person in one type of a role may have an interest in another, that if that was encouraged and nurtured, that they might end up being a wonderful employee in a completely different department. So that's where I want to end this, is that when we are talking about lifelong learning in the workplace, people are often innately curious, and goodness knows we need to promote that and nurture that sense of curiosity in people. And so making them attend every training as a mandatory course, mandatory activity, is not going to foster that lifelong learner. So keep that in mind. Thanks again to everyone for continuing to listen every week. Thank you to my guests and episode sponsors that have been part of the show so far. It's been an amazing few months, and I'm excited for 2025. I really, really do want to encourage you to message me if you have topic ideas, speaker ideas. We want to continue to build out the speaker list and the topic list and our calendar of shows. And so I really, really would like for you to send me your suggestions for topics, for show ideas. And if you are interested in sponsoring an episode, I promise you it's extremely affordable, and you don't have to do a whole lot in order to do that, and then you get promoted for each of the episodes that you sponsor. So I'd love to talk to you more about that as well. And keep on listening live on Tuesdays on iHeartRadio's Power Me Up Talk Radio 24/7 and on demand on our YouTube channel. Thank you again so much. I can't believe it's the end of 2024, but I really am excited to see what 2025 brings for us. Keep on learning. You've been listening to One More Thing, a radio show on the Power Me Up radio station on iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Kiffin McCoy-Albert. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to you tuning in next time as we continue cultivating your mind with one more thing.